Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Conversations with Wendy this lovely Friday morning. I'm very grateful for your time and for everybody joining us. Please let us know where you're joining us from and allow us to give 5 minutes to our participants to attend so that we will begin at 9:05. I want to say good morning to everybody that is here. Thank you, Dennis. Good morning, Joshua, Elfers. Good morning, Willie. Good morning, Angela. Good morning, Catherine. We're very happy to have you here. We give it 5 more minutes for our participants to join, meaning we'll begin at 5 minutes past the hour. Feel very welcome. Good morning, Karen and Brian, and we are very happy to have you here. Good morning one more time, and thank you very much for joining Conversations with Wendy this lovely Friday morning. Just let us know in the chat where you're joining us from. Feel very welcome. And remember to like and follow us on all our socials. That's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We're very happy to have you here on this first Conversations with Wendy webinar for the month of January. And I'm very pleased to have my panelists with me here, and we're ready to begin without much further ado. Let me just ask my panelists to turn on their cameras, and then we can be able to begin.
Please enable camera sharing, Wendy.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Let me just do that right now as we continue. So, ladies and gentlemen, one more time, welcome. And we are happy to have you here. My name is Wendy, for everybody that does not know me and is joining for the very first time. Allow me just a second to allow my panelists to have their videos on. Just give me 1 second for that. Good morning. Once again for everybody that's joining us. My name is Wandera Kweyu, and I work for Conversations with Wendy. We are very happy to have you here. Allow me to just complete the beginning of the webinar, even as my panelists are working towards getting their videos on. Like I said, my name is Wandera Koyu. Everybody that knows me calls me Wendy. I'm very excited for you to join us this morning, and I'm very happy and honor your time to be with us this morning. I'll just let my panelists introduce themselves, even as I am beginning to turn on their videos. My apologies. And then we'll pick it up from there. So we can start with Susan. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wendy, and a warm, happy Friday to you all. I'm super excited to be here with you today. My name is Susan Kiamba. I am the CEO of Blue Elite. Blue Elite is a training, coaching, and consulting firm where we work with individuals to help them maximize their potential. And as part of my work at Blue Elite, I am a career coach, a career clarity coach for banking professionals. And one of the topics we talk a lot about with the bankers that I work with is on the question of personal branding. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart as far as personal branding for career success is concerned. So I'm looking forward to an engaging time, some fantastic conversations, and please, 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 ask all your questions around personal branding for career success. That's why I and the other panelists are here today, and I can't wait to keep engaging with you all. Thank you so much. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you very much, Susan. Susan, can you hear us? My apologies for the technicalities that we're experiencing. I'd like to now ask my panelist, Emmanuel, to introduce himself as we're proceeding.
Good morning, Wendy, and good morning, everyone. My name is Emmanuel Makoha. I'm really, really excited to be here this morning. I am a certified career coach and the founder of Fresh Jobs Kenya. And at Fresh Jobs Kenya, apart from Fresh Jobs Kenya being a platform that helps professionals to achieve their goals, we also give an opportunity for people who want to advertise their roles on our platform to be able to advertise so that people can apply for the jobs that they desire. And one of the things that really drives me the most as a career growth coach is to empower my clients to discover their true potential, because we all have this immense potential that is hidden in us. And for us to create a fulfilling and rewarding career, sometimes just like an athlete would need someone to work with as a coach, I'm always available to work with professionals from diverse industries, just to coach them and give them the assurance that yes, they can be able to make it and move on to the next level. Thank you so much, and I look forward to a very exciting conversation and engaging conversation. Back to you, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. I'll just now let our last panelist, Kay, introduce himself and then we'll proceed.
Great. Thank you, Wandi, and good morning to everyone. So my name is Kay Matereke. I'm a senior partner at Tactive Consulting. Our core focus is really working with high growth startups and family businesses. The core work we do is really business transformation. So we focus on business owners and trying to add value to how they see the landscape. And I think to just tie it into personal branding, as businesses continue to grow, and as you continue to increase your opportunities, how you present yourself is critical, because it either can open or close doors. And in a very highly integrated environment where it is all digital, the first thing people ask is, do you have a digital reference? And that digital reference is your personal branding. And I'm hoping to share a lot more insights about that. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you very much, Kay, Emmanuel, Susan, and again, feel very welcome for this conversation this morning. We're experiencing a bit of technical challenges, but we shall just proceed as we go on. Welcome to this conversation where we're talking about personal branding and how it has effect on your success as a career professional with a very strong reputation. Growing up, I've always been told that you can lose everything, but if you remain with your reputation, you still have a chance to get one or two things done. I never got to understand very well what that means until I was able to join the professional landscape. And I'm very happy for the time that the panelists have given us today so that we can be able to speak on this particular matter. And I just want to go very quickly into our conversation and start speaking first with Emmanuel and say, Emmanuel, you have been doing a lot to get jobs out there for people, to be able to get people hired and create something about how they look like to the people that want to hire them. So I just want to start with you and ask, how do you then define personal branding in a very simple way that people can be able to understand? And why is it that crucial for you, for us in this world?
Thank you very much, Wandi. Sorry for that. So personal branding is very, very important and very critical to any, I would say, to any form of business or anyone. And this is the reason. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, says that your personal branding is what people say when you're not in the room. And people are always concerned about who they are and how they know themselves than how people know about them. And I think that is where the disconnect is. You should care so much about what people say when you're not in the room. How do they understand, for example, your work ethic? How do they understand your value? Because every time someone's name is mentioned, or if a question comes up and they say, who can we, for example, invite to this party? Then people always rank people according to the way they feel or the way they think about them. The perception that comes has a rank, and you'd give it a rank to let's say 1 to 10. So whoever comes top of mind, that one is someone's personal brand. So the question you should ask yourself is, at what level can somebody be able to rank you on an aspect? Be it leadership, be it business leadership, be it any aspect of life that somebody would want to reach out to you for help. How are they able to rank you? So I would just say that this is just creating a unique identity for yourself that sets you apart from other people, and especially in your niche or around your field. So that is the basic definition that I'll be able to give. That what people say when you're not in the room, that is what we call a personal brand. Thank you very much,
Wow.
Wendy. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for that very simple and very direct definition of branding. And I like to utilize this opportunity to just tell a quick story, which is now very common if you are an avid follower of TED Talks, where there is one of these speakers who said, 9 out of 10, when you're sitting to get bonus allocations, everybody talks about people whom they know, whom they can trust in their work, and they are able to say, you know what, I know Wendy. Wendy is a solid person. She can be able to do X, Y, Z, so put her in this bucket. And this is what Emmanuel is talking about when he says that, you know, when you're not in the room, what are people saying about you? Are you very comfortable to be outside of a room and let people say things about you? So this goes back to what are you doing with yourself to communicate the brand, to communicate who you are and to lead you to a space where people can be able to infer the person that you are in a particular space. So ladies and gentlemen, again, let's start with understanding who do you think you are in the view of other people, so that I can go back and ask, okay, if you could share for us some examples of individuals who have just, you know, created a very lovely brand and they can have been able to leverage it very strongly to their professional growth.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be on this call and to represent not only people who are on the journey of employment, but also people who are now business owners who are trying to win business through the lens of personal branding. Maybe to begin, I would start by really coining my definition of personal branding. It is either the composition of your values or the perception of those values, right? The composition of the values requires a certain level of self-clarity, right? What do I want people to know about me and what I stand for? And if you aren't able to articulate that in the way you present yourself, present your work, communicate to others efficiently, then technically people don't really know who you are. Secondly, the way you present it also now is open to sort of translation. It's what people then walk away with as who you are because of how they experienced you. So some of us may have a higher sense of self, which means you feel good about yourself. But other people would say, no, this person, you know, they're very shy, you know, they may be too aggressive. This person doesn't have good interpersonal skills. And a lot of that is how our values translate in the way that we communicate. Coming back to Wendy's a question about the example, I think of Vusi Thembekwayo, right? His journey started as an orator, a speaker. And it's moved from speaking to being an entrepreneur, to being an investor, now to being one of the most notable personalities in the region and in the globe. And why is that? It is because if you listen to him, you actually hear his value set, right? You understand what he believes, how he presents himself, whether it is in writing, whether it is in imagery, whether it is in the composition of his content. And then second to that, we then all have the opportunity to then translate that in our own way. And I think he's a great example that people can use to emulate, just from a journey of imagine someone speaking for a living to then becoming everything else they want to achieve.
Beautifully said. And I like the conversation of values, because in the current space that we are in, there is a lot of conversation on what do you hold for true for yourself? What is that thing that when you do, you would be comfortable to do it yourself? You would be comfortable to be associated with that thing. And then it brings out the individual that you are in a very interesting space. When you talk about that, I would also just like to speak about two brands that have become quite an interesting name throughout the business world, where there is a time where the CEO and owner of Virgin Atlantic, it became very difficult for you to differentiate the business and the person. And you see the brand that they created was very strong, and it's something that they liked. And that was an edgy brand that was created, somebody like Elon Musk. And you see, one of the things that these people go with is that this is me. These are the values that I hold true, and I am very comfortable to be associated with these values. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this morning. This is our Conversations with Wanti first webinar. I would like to remind everybody to like and follow us on our socials. That's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat or in the question and answer chat box also. I want to go back to you now, Susan, and understand, when we already have this brand that we have put out there, how then do we show or just identify for ourselves and communicate the unique strengths that we hold? Every time people say in a business space, they keep saying, identify the company's unique selling point. So how then do we do it for ourselves, that we can be able to distinguish ourselves very clearly and show value from the difference of all the other people that are in the space growing their professional reputation?
Awesome. Thanks for that question, Wanti. And I think it wouldn't be right if we didn't start from mentioning this, because our strengths are so integral to who we are. They are such a part of us. Many of us don't actually realize or call them out as strengths. And in my journey as a Gallup strengths coach, one of the things I have uncovered is that things that are so obvious are not necessarily obvious to everyone. And so that journey, and I can also just reflect on my own journey to uncovering what my strengths were when I first took my strengths assessment, is actually how you begin to identify those strengths. So first things first, reflect on your story. And each of us has a story, whether that's a professional story or a personal story. So if we're thinking about it from a professional perspective, if you've been working for 5 years, in all those different roles, all the different people that you worked with, what are some of the things that you learned? What are some of the things that you were specifically doing as you that nobody else could seem to do? And again, also thinking about, as you've gone through that process, what have people come back to you and said you did this particularly well? Or what kind of projects might your boss have specifically identified only you, to take up and to be able to do? So one of the things, step one, reflect on your career story. And everyone has a story. And I like to tell my coaching clients when we're going through the clarity journey that don't take anything for granted. All your experience counts. All of it matters, all of it counts, nothing, no experience is wasted. So imagine that you're telling your story to somebody who's never been there. Imagine it was a movie being told about your life and your career. So what are those things that you begin to pick up? And the second thing that I've found that is integral in helping people identify their strengths so that they can know how to communicate them is a couple of tests I devised. So I call them the 3 tests. So the first test, I call it the 2 a.m. test. If we woke you up at 2 a.m., what's that thing that without thinking you'd be able to do? Because in those things, it could be 1 thing, it could be 3 things, it could be 5 things. In those things, there is pointers and indicators as to what are your strengths and what is uniquely you. So very good example. If you woke me up at 2 a.m. and said, hey, Susan, we need you to coach this client, we need you to help this person get clarity, or we need you to deliver this training, I can absolutely do it without having to work so hard, because those are some of my strengths. Now, if I woke you up at 2 a.m., and I'll invite everyone who's joining us today to think about it, what are those things? I once had a client tell me, the thing I can do is cooking. Okay, so let's talk about cooking, because cooking can seem to be very random. It can seem to be very out there. But what is it about the cooking that you enjoy? And they began to say, it's the fact that I can mix up ingredients and put them together and make a very sumptuous meal that brings people joy. And then as soon as they said that, it triggered something for them that even at work, they tend to be the ones who bring ingredients together. They bring people together. They bring ideas together. So it might seem random that it's cooking, but beyond cooking, there's actually something else to it. So as part of the test, second thing that I actually ask people to do is, what are those things that you spend so much time doing that you lose track of time? Like if you started doing it, you'd not realize 5 hours are gone. That's a very good indicator as to your strength, because no one ever wants to work in a place of weakness. We all find joy in working where we are already good, because there's joy from it, there's fulfillment from it, and there's satisfaction from it. So what's that thing that you enjoy doing so much that you lose track of time? So I call that the lost time test. And then the third test that I ask people to take is the guy test. So when I call you up and say, hey, Wandy, I'm having a problem with my car. And you tell me, oh, I can hook you up with a guy. I know a guy. So what are you the guy for? What's that thing that people come to you constantly to ask you for help with? Do not underestimate that, because that is already an indicator as to what your brand is as far as they're concerned. Because for me, a brand is who people associate you with or what people associate you with. So if people are constantly asking you for help with reports, could it be that analytics is something that you do very well? If people are constantly asking you to come and sit down with a group of people and talk to them, is it that maybe you inspire people? So the third test is the guy test. What do people come to you for help with? And then the third and last way people can begin to identify their strengths is, of course, taking an assessment. And there are so many assessments out there, but the two assessments that are found that give a very good indicator as to people's strengths, as to people's natural way of working very well at work, is the DISC assessment, as well as the Gallup Strengths Assessment. We live with who we are. And so because we live with who we are, it becomes very hard for us to tell what those things that are unique about us are. And so these assessments are able to pull those things out of us. And when we read our reports, like when I read my strengths report for the first time, I was sure somebody was peeping over my shoulder because it was so spot on. So those are the three ways, I think, Wandy, that somebody can begin to identify those unique strengths, because it's only in being able to identify them that you can actually demonstrate them, that you can actually show them, and that you can actually use them to position yourself as a professional and as a brand within the workplace. Over to you, Wandy.
Beautifully said. I think one of the things that I'm going to pick out from this is the guy tester. I've always been noticing myself as that guy, and as Susan was speaking, it just hit me that anybody is looking at this, but in any space of the labor ecosystem, and the one that would be that guy. And as I'm sitting here, that I have to even communicate, do you need to go and create? I just want to go back and ask them to manual. Then once you know this strength, colleagues to social media platforms, people can be able to say, now, when you're in Wandy's hands, you are safe with XYZ.
Thank you very much, Wandy. I'm not so sure if I got you very well. I think my network or your network was not very, very okay, but my apologies for that. So once you are able to identify yourself as, once you identify your strengths and know who you are, define your values, understand how your values are actually going to help you build your career, then you can actually be able to start building your brand, down up. So you begin, first of all, by being very genuine about yourself. Everybody was created differently, and they can actually be able to be understood differently. So you'll start building your authentic brand in a very genuine way. And that means that everything that you do, the way you tell your story, becomes unique to you. You can't go out maybe copying, what one is doing or what someone else is doing. And that's why if you hear different people talking about different things, they might talk about the same thing, but the way they bring it out in a very unique way. And that is something that, we appreciate, that God created us differently and we all can sound very different. So be genuine and authentic in the way you bring out your brand. The next one is be somebody who can give some sort of, concrete examples. Your life is made of examples. So if your unique strength, as Susan put it, You're somebody who can actually be able to inspire. Then you can give us your historical perspective of, the inspirations that you've actually been able to give in the past. And there was a time I was having a conversation with someone, and I asked them about their leadership and their communication capabilities. And they told me that they've never held any leadership position. And I asked them, is that true? Let's go back all the way to high school. And this person told me that there are two things that she was very good in, and one was that she was actually, a head girl in the school, and the second thing was that she was very passionate about debating. So it doesn't matter if you're at entry level or you're at senior level. If you can be able to talk to a group of people and they listen to you, that means that you have something unique about yourself that they can actually be able to follow and listen to. The other one is, you need to tailor your message. We all know that, just more than 60% of what we say is not in what we speak. Sometimes the way we dress, sometimes the way we articulate ourselves, sometimes the way we react to things, that is a brand in itself. There are people who can be able to pick some things from us just by looking at us. By looking at our profiles online. I can go to your Facebook and look at it, and I can pick something about it. So remember that human beings are created in such a way that they can pick things. So are you able to be consistent with your message? If you're consistent with your message everywhere, in everything that you say, and I like what Kaya mentioned, that Vusi is very consistent with his message all across all platforms. That is the same thing that needs to happen to, to all of us. Let us be very consistent in everything that we say, all the way. Whether you're coming from church, the community around church should be able to understand that Emmanuel is a career growth coach. And in everything that you say, every sort of problem that you solve is geared towards that. Your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, let everybody understand that this is your message. The other one is always, be concise. So when you're communicating your value, you need to be concise. The more you're actually concise, it means that you have deeper understanding of who you are, and you have deeper understanding of what your value is. Another thing is practice. I remember that all of us have come from school and we participated in various competitions. Practice truly makes perfect. Even when you're starting to bring out your brand on day one, it cannot come out as you want. And you always know that there's always space for improvement. So keep planning. If you want to build yourself as a public speaker, look at yourself in the mirror, speak. Have the people in your family, give you positive, give you what we call constructive criticism. Let them tell you that you're not audible. Let them tell you that you're shy. Just be out there so that people can shape who you are. Then the other bit is work on your confidence. Your brand will not work if you're not confident. And I'm not saying that you might not suffer from some shivers here and there. It's very normal for us to suffer from for some, because of some issues here and there as we grow our brand. But it's important for you to just stick to it and know that Rome was not built in a day, and you can also be able to build your own brand. The other one is make very good use of all the tools on social media. Like LinkedIn is doing a very fantastic job. They're actually giving us the polls. You can utilize the polls if you're very good with polls. Until people associate you with polls, you can actually use the LinkedIn Live. You can be able to go on YouTube. You can be able to go on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is that you can be able to use. Make sure that you're familiar with all these tools and how you can uniquely bring out your brand. Be creative. Read a lot. If there's one thing that I do on a daily basis, is to read. There's no single day that I go to bed without reading something new. Learn something new on a daily basis, because your brand will suffer a lot if you don't come out and add value to it. The only way you can water your brand keep learning, keep learning, keep learning, better it, better it. If there's one slogan that drives me, is bettering the best. If today I spoke and I was, I could rank it at 6, let me see what I can be able to do tomorrow and move to 9, move to whatever figure that you want to move. Back to you, Andy.
Beautifully said. You know, there are very many things that happen in every given situation and conversation where you have to go back and say, am I practicing the things that I want to speak about loudly? Am I getting feedback on what I think I'm doing vis-a-vis what I am being perceived? I'd like to ask each and everybody that is seated here today to just quickly do a brand audit. And I know it's something that might seem out of the ordinary, but it's really very simple. You can ask, like, say, 5, 10 questions, send it to people that know you in a personal space, send it to other people that know you in a professional space, come back, look and see how you are portraying yourself out there. Because, you know, there is something about me believing that this is what I'm portraying and how my portrayal is received within the market. And it's very important that you're able to have those two things blend together. One of the things that I like that Emmanuel has just said is you need to be authentic. And when I was much, much younger, I like to tell this story. I used to be a very avid follower of different individuals. So I would go and follow these individuals, and next 2 weeks, I would be almost that individual. And in the other next 2 weeks, I found another one, and then I'm that other individual. And I noticed that I was running circles around my brand that I myself was not necessarily sure what it is that I want to do. And it was very burdensome for you to continue carrying something that is not necessarily you. So as I pose this question back to Kai and just wonder, then why is authenticity so important in personal branding, and how does it affect your professional reputation? And I also see there's a question here in the chat box from Diana, who asks, how do you break self-sabotage syndrome when it is on this journey for personal branding?
Great, thank you, Wendy. So first, I would like to acknowledge my panelists. Incredible content. I feel like the audience and I'm sitting on the panel at the same time. So kudos to both of you. And thank you, Wendy, for just steering the conversation. It is very intriguing, and I think it's very inspiring because it will shape how everyone thinks about their personal brand. So to respond to your question, I think there are two things that we need to sort of understand. So the first context is the world is changing. A lot about the world before was about direct human interaction. Suddenly, post-COVID, everything has gone digital. And whilst a few people may have close proximity to you to experience and try to decipher your brand, the responsibility to really shape your brand is now yours. Now, in order to do that in a fragmented world where everything has now gone digital, there has to be that internal compass. So how do you gain a clear sense of self? Because I think to that question about self-sabotage, it really starts to say, are you clear about what you, who you are, what you believe, and where you want to go? So the first recommendation I would make is sit down with yourself and just list your interests. And I think the previous speakers have given some anecdotal mechanisms of really understanding what you care about. I will go further and say that the things that you care about shape how you show up. And it's critical for you to understand, if you are able to find your interests and passion, you actually are able to catalyze your core capabilities. So if you are a person who is a manager in a business today and you're passionate about people, when you connect the job of management and your passion, you realize that you actually begin to excel really, really well. So the second bucket is really clarifying what are you good at. And I always say, I give the example of, singing, because everybody who sings say, I sing, but singing is a spectrum. We have Beyonce on one end, and then we have you on the other end. And the difference is that a person who is gifted in a certain environment is rewarded for their gift, right? So both of them have the same capability, but maturity really comes from people who will acknowledge you through payment. And I always say payment is the indicator of how good your skill is at a certain level. So mapping out what your core capabilities is the second part, but now measuring it to say, is it good enough for people to pay for? And the more and more you do it, and the more and more they will pay, the more and more you will sort of understand where you are ranked in terms of capability. The third is reference skills. Life is an odd journey. Today you are maybe housekeeping because you don't have a job, you're babysitting. Tomorrow, you're a makanga in a different environment. The other day you're helping someone else with their social media. And life allows you to acquire skills as you go through it. And some of these skills are not skills that sit front of mind, but every experience gives you a certain skill. And that starts to give you an opportunity to begin to expand what you are capable of. So to summarize it, I would say the first thing to do is to actually understand that you have a responsibility to communicate, right? No one's going to guess who you are. No one's going to be patient enough, especially in a digital environment, to know what you represent. So you have that responsibility. But to get clarity about it, you need to spend time with yourself, really take time to note what your passions and interests are, really be objective of what you're capable of, and then note some of the reference skills. And when you begin to combine those elements, you then start to have to, go through a process of how do I communicate what I believe, what I represent, so that other people can buy in. When I use the word buy-in is because, customers, colleagues, bosses have the choice to buy into what you believe, right? And this is where authenticity is important. People really, believe what you believe. When you don't believe something, then they have no incentive. There's nothing that is convincing them that there is value in what you are proposing. So a big piece of buy-in really starts at brand level, and brand level is your own conviction. And when you are convicted about something, other people will start to opt in, and that's how your personal brand begins to resonate with more and more people. But without clarity, without taking time to do all these exercises, and then really building an actionable plan to communicate it, we're sort of lost in a sea. Behind me, there are a lot of umbrellas, right? You become the white umbrella, right? And so to become blue, there is quite a bit of work that needs to be done, and it is your individual responsibility. Thank you.
Very, very well said, Kai, and especially on the areas where you need to take personal responsibility and communicate, because at the end of this day, whether you are a blue umbrella or a white umbrella, it's all about you. You can opt to be a blue umbrella today, or you can be comfortable just fading out in the crowd, which then would not be able to put you in that space that you want to be when it comes to winning over different types of individuals within the professional space, and also to ensure that the authenticity of what you are communicating is actually being perceived the way you think it is being perceived, and you're living up to the brand promise that you have given. Because one of the things that is quite interesting that people don't seem to reflect on very much is sometimes you go out and you meet these professional branding experts, personal branding experts, and they create this brand around you, and you don't leave the brand. Because one thing that I do know is that the biggest disservice that you can do yourself is to create a brand and be not the person that leaves that brand, because it leaves everybody feeling very cheated with an interestingly weird taste in their mouth. I don't know if there is recruiters in this room, and there's a joke that we always put out and say some people go out and have their CVs authored very well, by other individuals. And when they come into the interview, you're reading the CV, you're listening to this individual, and you're wondering, all right, so who's this person who was in the CV and who exactly are you? Which then becomes a really interesting space for you to wonder, are you able to sit back and say that this is me, and make sure that when you're saying this is me, you're advancing yourself? So I want to go back to you, Susan, and say, could you just share with us some success stories or maybe a case study here and there where personal branding significantly contributed to somebody's career advancement, or where or in areas where there are no opportunities? And while you're at it, I would just ask to see if you can respond to this question by Terry Gadoni that says, as a young professional who is still figuring out your brand, how do you maintain confidence when you're uncertain what your brand is and how your brand is being perceived? Is your career/profession synonymous with your brand?
Thanks so much, Wendy. As Kay was sharing, I was smiling because I had a flashback to some time back when I remember joining this LinkedIn Live, and on the LinkedIn Live, we're being encouraged to connect with some of the people in the audience. So I reached out to someone in the audience who I thought, oh, it would be great to connect with this person. So they sent me back a message saying, oh my goodness, Susan, I've been following you for ages and ages. I'm honored to connect. So around that time, I was going through what we are really essentially discussing, but for my business, like what was the brand, what was the business, what do people know me for? So I sent a message, an email. So anyone who connected with me around that time, I would email them back and say, I'm just curious, if you're to describe me and what I do to your friend or to somebody who has never met me before, what would you say? And the interesting thing is, almost all of them said, you're a motivational speaker, you're an inspirational speaker, which was great, but it's not what I was going for at the time. So it clearly told me there was a problem. And so I had to go back and look at my messaging and see, okay, so when I put out my posts, what kind of posts was I putting out? When I was speaking to people during events or during trainings, what was I actually saying? And so that was actually very, very, very eye-opening for me. And it reminds me of a client who had a very, very, very specific thing that they wanted to be known for. They actually wanted to be known as an public speaker on the international stages. And so for them, the big question was, how do I actually get there? Because they felt the story that I have to tell doesn't sound wow. Like, I mean, it doesn't sound that wow to me. And I remember in the course of the conversation, I said, what if you began to share your story? What becomes possible? And as they began to tell their story, turns out very many people resonated with what they were sharing. Like they had no clue that their personal story that was very painful at some point could actually be something that somebody wanted to listen to. And so they began to write. So they actually wrote and published a book. And after they wrote and published a book, they began to get invited to speak on stages like schools and universities. And so they began to go to the schools, they began to go to universities, and they began to speak about yourself, about knowing yourself, about being interested in your own journey, knowing that nobody is coming to save you, you need to save yourself. And even if life has dealt you hard blows, figure it out. Like there's a way around it. Like it is not the end of the world. And they essentially used their own story to show how that could be possible because they were talking about something that they did. And as they continued to do this, the stages began to open. So they got invited to television to tell their story. And again, of course, when you get onto a national platform, it's very soon becomes international. And well, it took some time, but eventually she did get onto that international professional speaking stage that she was looking for. And today they get invited to speak across the world on the topic that was a personal story when it started out. People resonated with it as they went along. It became a book. It became a workbook. It became a course. It became something that was adopted by so many institutions as a way to inspire young people to have a dream, to pursue the dream. And even when your dream gets cut short by unexpected life circumstances, to pick yourself up and to keep going on. So that's an example of someone I have worked with in the past whose the story inspires me. And even now when we talk, I keep saying, I can't believe how positive you are given all that you've been through. I can't imagine how giving you are, because she gives a lot. And she says, you know what? I recognize I have been blessed. I recognize I was helped. And I recognize that I still have a lot more that I can do to help and change people's lives. And they continue to do it. She continues to do it day in, day out. And it's completely and absolutely inspiring. And that, in a way, answers the question that Terry had asked us, because when you're still young, it can feel like you know nothing. And I happen to know this from personal experience, because I also lecture at the university. And we talk about this question of who are you? And it's a question that we were actually talking about just this past week. Just who are you? And it can begin to feel like I know nothing about myself. But the truth is, you know something about yourself. So how do you start? You actually start with what you know about yourself. What is it that I know about me? What am I good at? Begin to ask yourself those questions. Begin to say, what have people complimented me about in the past? Because that's an indicator as to what you're already skilled at. So that gives you the confidence. So you're able to take that confidence from, I have done this before, I got told that I did this well, and I know that I can actually do this well. So begin with what you have, and you have something. None of us has nothing. So you have something. And going back to something Emmanuel said earlier, when people say, I have never led, that's untrue, because some of us are leaders in our families, leaders in our communities. You could be the one that in your family, people always call upon when they need to plan something. So that means you also have some sort of project management skills. You have some sort of leadership skills. So when you're thinking about what you have, think about it broadly. Don't just limit it to your job. Don't just limit it to your career, because what you learn in your personal life can still be applied. It's transferable into your job. So start with what you have, right? This is what I have. I know I have communication skills because I have done this. I know I have project management. I know I have leadership. Start with that. And then the next step to that is ask, who do I want to become? And if you've not read Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, she actually talks about the journey to First Lady. And when you read, you actually can see that it didn't happen overnight. It was a series of opportunities. It was a series of saying yes to some things, saying no to some things, saying yes to some things when she had absolutely no idea how it was actually going to work out. So who are you becoming? And so when you look at who you're becoming, and when you look at who you want to be in the long run, which is essentially what becomes your brand, you're able to be intentional in working out that brand. Every single day, waking up and asking, am I positioning myself to be known as the go-to person for all things analytics? Am I doing something today that gets me positioned as the guy to talk to if I need something that's related to finance, if I need something customer service, if I need something that's related to admin? So when you're still starting out, when you're not sure what it is that you are becoming, have that dream of who you want to become. But start where you are and work at it every single day. Be very, very, very progressive. And if I can share my story one day, when I worked in the bank, because I had a previous career in banking, I loved training. And I wanted to work in HR and to do training. But every single door that I tried to step through kept getting shut. And so I said, you know what, if I cannot work in HR today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that anytime anyone thinks training, they think of Susan. So how did I start? I actually started in my department. Any new team member who joined, I'd tell my supervisor, hey, let me train them, let me show them, let me induct them, let me let them know how to go about things in this team. Whenever IT would call and somebody would get stuck, I'd say, hey, give me the phone. And very soon IT would say, we need to help this person in your department. Could you get us Susan? So very soon, anytime anyone needed training done, they'd think of me. And anytime I'd show up in the training department, they'd be like, oh, you've come, fantastic. And then I'd go out and actually ask some of the more experienced trainers and say, I know you've done this training 6 million times. You can do it in your sleep. How about giving me the training to run? You can sit in and then give me feedback about what it is that I've done, what I can improve. And very soon, anytime there was a training opportunity, I'd find myself in there. I became the training champion for my departments wherever I worked. I eventually got into HR and worked in the training department and did training. And it was because I started where I was and with what I had. So challenge back to someone who's listening to this today and they're wondering, how do I begin to build that brand? Start where you are, think about where you want to go, and every single day do something that brings you closer to getting there. It might take some time. There's no promise that this is an overnight thing. What I can promise that if you put in the work, you will see the results. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Susan, first for sharing. Because, you know, every person sits back and wonders, how did so-and-so become this big? How did so-and-so do this? And the thing that you need to be able to remind yourself is that you have to start. I have a coach who talks to me consistently about how to differentiate myself from every other person. And I remember there's a joke we always make where she says, you know, things would be really bad if you're the only one who's walking somewhere and there's this cloud of rain that's just following you alone and it's not touching any other person. That's the time when you should be able to stand back and say, hey, wait, should I stop and wonder why this cloud of rain is following me? But you see, at the given point of starting, you have to start and you have to press on, because not everything that you want would come in today. And I keep saying, you might get 10% today, 20% tomorrow, and there's that day you're going to hit your 70%. And this is how great people are built. And when we keep talking about building these brands, let's go to you, Emmanuel, and talk about the credibility of the brands that we're building. So I just want to know from you, what role does a strong personal brand play in building trust and credibility within our professional network? And I'd also pose the question here that asks, how to combat the feeling of inadequacy or not being capable for the role, in other terms, imposter syndrome. How do you work around that as you're building credibility for the brand, among other things? Over to you, Iman.
Thank you very much, Wendy, and thank you very much, Susan, for the great insights that you've shared. What I can be able to say is that from my own experience, for you to build a brand that is, authentic, a brand that, someone can be able to resonate with, you can be able to do your research and understand the kind of problem that you want to solve. The way, and I'll go back to the way, we were created. Somehow the way we stay as human beings, you realize that it's more or less like the way the jungle looks like. So when you go to a jungle today, you realize that each and every animal within the ecosystem has its role to play. So each and every one of us has something that is unique that we have, that we can be able to solve another person's problem. So for you to be able to look authentic, what you need to do is you need to gather a lot of knowledge, gather how you can be able to solve a particular problem, and look at the various, what I would say, the subsets of problems. And I'll give you an example. Within this particular training with this particular webinar that we're actually handling today, you realize that people are attending this webinar because of various reasons. There are others maybe who feel like they need to start branding themselves. Others are at the point of, I have already branded myself, but I don't feel if I'm growing. So their need might look like the same, but it's not the same. So when you're communicating that information to those two different people, you need to communicate that information differently. And I'll take you back to, the largest telco in this country. You realize that the largest telco in Kenya communicates their value differently to various individuals. There are people who they encourage, they're building a brand that can be able to motivate people who are not connected to the internet to actually connect. But at the same time, they're also pushing people who are used to working with the internet now to even move more, what I would say a notch higher in terms of now, applying the latest technology when it comes to their internet usage. And that is just exactly how you can position your brand. The kind of language that is spoken to the two groups of people is totally different. So as a person, for you to be authentic and for you to have the credibility that people would identify with, you need to first of all understand your audience. And every time that I serve my clients, if there's something that I don't do, and I would encourage you to do that. If somebody gives me a call today and tells me, Emmanuel, how much is ABCD? If there's one thing that I can be able to, tell you if you're in business or something of the sort, first of all, get to sit down with them and understand their problem. Because solving a problem is never a universal thing. Everybody has their own unique problem. They feel differently. And that's why when you ask people in the room how they feel, others will tell you they're feeling cold, others will tell you they're feeling warm, and that is just who they are. So it's important for us to understand the exact need that this person has. Then we can be able now to tailor our message to be able to fit into that particular space. So for you to be able to remain credible, what you need to do is build that consistency, but then get to understand the various facets of the problem that you're solving and speak to those different individuals. So if you're speaking to the young people, if you're speaking to the, to the old people, get to understand how they consume that kind of information. Remember, the uptake of that information is totally different. That's why I think I was in a forum yesterday, and not in a forum, actually in an alumni group of my high school. And somebody was asking what Netflix is. These are people who are in school in the 60s. So they were wondering, what is Netflix? Somebody was talking about Netflix. And I can't blame them. This is somebody who has the money, has traveled the world, has done things that probably we as people who are coming up have not achieved. But it's true, they don't know what Netflix is. So it's important for you to know how to communicate to them, what Netflix is, and as opposed to somebody who already knows what Netflix is. So just be conscious, and you'll actually be able to crack it. Back to you, Wendy. Wendy, you're on mute.
My apologies. I'm saying being conscious is something that you have to really put in the forefront of your mind, and you have to be very intentional about it. Like if you have read the book by James Clear, where he talks about how your brain gets used to doing some things. He says sometimes you enter into a room, and if you have been in that room before, your brain is on autopilot. If it's dark, it knows where the light is at. You just switch it on and it continues. At that point, you're not actually having any active thought. And this is why you need to be able to realize how your brain works consistently. If it is used to doing something in a certain way, this habit will continue the way you are used to it. But if you're in a space where you're trying to create change, you have to be very intentional about the habits that you're creating, about everything that you want to communicate. So putting something in your conscious mind is something that you have to be very intentional about. Watch and make sure that what you're doing is actually what you think you're doing. I'll go to you, Kay, and ask just 2 questions. When it comes to maintaining consistency, are there any tips that you can give us to maintain consistency in personal branding across various platforms and interactions? And also ask a question that would be interesting to answer in the same breath, where we have our participant here has asked, can I have more than one brand? For example, I'm running 2 enterprises that are not necessarily related, but I want to grow them both.
Great. Those are really great questions. So consistency, and then, the idea of having multiple brands. So I want to speak to different people because I have a very unique perspective, and part of my perspective is that the world we live in, the more and more it becomes digital, we're seeing a lot of interesting behavior around side hustles becoming the main hustle, and people stepping out and they want to do things, right? So there's a group that are the professionals that have been recognized under the corporate brands that they represent, right? And then as time passes, they see the need to transition, and then they get this shock that they're not as important as they were the moment they step out of the shadow of the brand they represent. You know, before they were a senior manager, before they were an influential person, but on the other side, they're just a person, right? And this is the hallmark of personal branding. Sometimes we build our identity around the things we do or where we are, and we don't build our identity around our value system. And the danger of that is you're described by your function and you're not described for what you believe. And so the depth that is required in really building consistency is, first, what do you truly believe? It's not a marketing gimmick. You know, it is not just an exercise that you do to complete a task or to position yourself as somebody who is capable. It is being true to your fullest self. And I think consistency is built when you move away from doing things to be seen to only doing the things you truly believe. And that's why I love Susan's story, the energy to insert yourself and say, I'm going to do this. Let me help you with this. It's because it's intrinsic, right? It's not about the risk. It's not about the reward that you can gain, but it's doing the thing that you believe in. So consistency is first built from internal alignment. Do I believe what I'm doing is what I should do? I think I was responding to someone on the chat, and I said that, you know, you have to stay, your unique lens is your worldview, and that worldview needs to be married with what you truly believe. And that's the genesis of consistency, right? The people who care about training, marketing, people, you know, religion, they wake up every single day and they do the exact same thing because they believe it. So for personal branding to begin to really take shape, you know, you have to come out of the shadow of the function. You know, if you're a business person, you have an individual brand and then there is a business brand, right? Your individual brand can be married with your corporate brand. But the way to think about it, moving to the question 2, is that, you know, your value system will shape the work you choose to do. And so at the top, you're sort of known for what you believe, and then the mediums of expression may change. So one business may be in hospitality, the other may be in construction or in healthcare, and they can still be run and managed by the same person. But if you come to the apex of that group, the question is, what does the founder believe, or what does the individual believe, and how does that express itself in the 2 other brands? So a lot of it, again, it can feel a bit fluffy because we're talking about values, we're talking about how values shape outcomes, but the people who change the world are people who are mission first. They have a fundamental belief, and then that belief is then translated into an innovation, into a product, into a business. It is not that they start a business purely because there's a gap. The people who start businesses because of gaps, those businesses die. But the people who believe that there is a cause in which they are contributing to the world, they both have the consistency and they both have the distinction in the brands that they build. To take the conversation a little further, I think it's important to acknowledge that, you know, I used to, you know, look at the way we were raised, and I grew up in a different country, and I went to a private school, and I saw people who went to like Catholic schools, and when I looked at the way the mission of the school was reinforced in Catholic schools, that's when I started to get a little sense of how commitment to values shape the way we behave. You know, there's a lot of branding that can be, it's marketing. You're trying to gain attention. You're not really representing your beliefs. You want to be disruptive for the sake of being disruptive. So you will take something and turn it upside down, and then suddenly we'll have a conversation. But turning it upside down, does it represent our values, or does it start a conversation? So our value systems are really critical, especially at individual level, because at the end of the day, business is done with people. And the first thing that people ask is, what do you believe? What do you represent? And when that is well defined, you begin to build trust. And then that trust now goes into a conduit, which is the transaction or the business that you have. And then customers, other businesses can begin to hold on to your promise. But if you cannot see the value of building very clear values and translating them, then basically you're marketing and offering that you're truly not committed to. So consistency is a product of internal clarity that is then translated into how you do your work, right? So separate your function from your belief, right? Don't use your function to describe what you believe. Secondly, even if you have multiple opportunities to run businesses or to contribute to different forms, whether we're contributing at family level, contributing at community level, contributing at different business units, your personal brand doesn't have to shift, right? It is still true to what you truly believe, but depending on how what space you're in, the way it translates may need to be refined to speak to the core audiences. And if we can balance those two elements, I think we will be truly successful. The other nugget is really stressing that, and I think, Wendy, you talked about this, and Susan also talked about this. Personal stories cannot be understated and undervalued. Before the current business I'm working in, I met 3 female founders. They wanted to connect marginalized artisans with a global market. I like working on projects that are very complex. There was a whole inclusion play there. And, when I started working with them, they said they wanted to make it a global brand. And I didn't understand, if we're dealing with brass, recycled horn, and we're working with artisans in developing settlements, how does this translate into a global brand? In 4.5 years, we built a multi-million-dollar business. We were shipping to 65 markets. We built a technology solution that supported more than 2,500 artisans. Go online and check out shopsoko.com. We had Michelle Obama with a product. We were on the cover of Essence magazine with Michelle Obama. We were on the cover of Oprah magazine, April 2019 issue. And when you look at it at the core, we were selling the cultural capital, the fact that there are communities that are working on product, right, in different places, and their story was translated into a global and universal medium, which became the product, right? It was still brass. If you go onto the website, the product costs like $200, $300. If you go and see the cost of manufacturing, it's $2 or $3. But the difference is people are paying for story. They're paying for that origin and that cultural capital that we undervalue. And in this case, you are that asset, right? And until you begin to see that you have value as an individual, then you do not allow the world to recognize it as well, right? People cannot recognize what you do not see. And I think the journey for each person is to really say, how do I want to package my story? How well do I know my story? And then that will build into how do I become more consistent in sharing my story? And then even as platforms and opportunity increase, there is no distortion and there is no confusion. Thank you, Wendy.
I like what Kay has just brought out. Company is driven by a real mission. It's driven by a passion you have in your belly. A brand is also driven by that. I remember if if you're Kenyan and you're here and you remember the former minister, I think he was for ICT, by the name Bitangen Demo, he one day said, when I left the ministry, my phone stopped ringing immediately. And then he was sitting back wondering, is there something wrong with my phone? Because then you notice that the brand that he had opted to work inside was the fact that he works in this office and he's a minister. And this is a gentleman whose story is such a beautiful story to see, because he ended up really rebranding himself. And even right now, you cannot recognize the other person whose phone was not ringing to the person that this gentleman has become, which is everything about the brand and how you communicate it. I just want to answer this question from Teresia Thumi, who asks, mostly you find a person very good at what they do. However, because this person is an introvert and keeps to themselves, they get overshadowed by extroverts. I would like to hear panelists' insights on this, where the society we are in today tends to exalt extroverts mostly. Mostly introverts are encouraged to advise to be who they are, not to fit in. I wanted to specifically share my insights on that because I am one of the biggest introverts that you would meet. I think if you've ever seen this meme that goes around, somebody says, call so-and-so, and then somebody says, I'll send you a text. And then say, no, I really want you to call so-and-so, like, don't worry, I'll send 2 texts. When you say the third one, like, please call so-and-so, like, I'll send an email and 4 texts, because I am that person who sits back and just, if I could hide in my cocoon forever, is something that I would really appreciate. But what I have done for self to get to a space where my being an introvert does not overshadow the things I like has been to create a space where I am comfortable to be authentically me. And when you find me sitting in these conversations, I am at myself. I am vibrant. I'm enjoying myself. I'm having a good time with it. But when you meet me outside in the group there and want to say, hey, Wendy, stand up and say something, you might notice that previously I used to sit back and be like, let me just hide back. Huh? Let me just sort of disappear in the crowd. But what I ended up doing consistently is understanding, what do you like? Who are you and where are you most comfortable to be yourself? When you're in those spaces, what happens is that you're able to just enjoy your authentic self, and it becomes really easy to work around that situation. So for introverts, I really advise that go out of your way to create and understand your comfort zone. Work in that comfort zone as you start to scale yourself slowly by slowly, because scalability with introverts is something that we really panic about, but you do it one step at a time. And I just want to go to you, Emmanuel, and say, what are some of those tools or techniques that an individual can use to enhance and manage their personal brand? And I'd also ask you to go ahead and respond to this question also. If you notice your brand does not resonate with what you stand for, do you then go ahead and rebrand?
Thank you, Wendy, for sharing a beautiful story. And I think just to respond to the question first, if you discover that your brand is not resonating with what you stand for, the truth is yes, you have to rebrand. There's one question I keep asking my clients, and what I always ask them is, you're competing in which space? Are you competing in the past? Are you competing today? Or are you competing for the future? So one of the things that I've done is, if you go to my LinkedIn profile, for example, there are companies I've worked for, but I've not been able to update the same on my profile. Done very good work there. I have a very good name there. But one of the things that I've always wanted to bring out is my passion for coaching, my passion to help people grow their careers. Yeah. And that is something that I have sacrificed my profile for, other than any other thing. Yeah. So for you to be able to start growing your brand with the things that resonate with you, you have to ask yourself, are you making yourself relevant for tomorrow or for yesterday or for today? So one of the competitions that I'm in fiercely is the competition for tomorrow, not today. If you go back and check the things I studied, the places I've worked, you realize that I cannot be able to stand out in that crowded place. Because I'll give you an example. I studied finance in campus. How do I grow myself and become the thought leader in finance? It will take me ages. But now I can be able to become a thought leader in this space because this space is relatively new. So it's important for you to notice that once you get your values right, ask yourself, what do you want to be tomorrow? Don't complain about the things you've not achieved yesterday and today. Look at how you'd want people to address you tomorrow. Very important. Start working on that today. And 2, 3, 4 years down the line, I can assure you from where I sit, you will be a brand that is actually a sustainable brand, so to speak. And I'll give you an example of people that I've actually been able to work with. There are people that I've sat in my coaching class, and they are doing very well on LinkedIn. Less than 1 year down the line, they're actually big names. So one of the things that I was actually telling them is you have to build what is called sustainability. Remember, any business cannot survive without sustainability. Your brand cannot survive with sustainability. So solve the problems, identify the problems as they keep evolving, and be adaptable. And now to the question of the tools that you can actually be able to use. The first thing that I advise people is, you remember when we were in school, there's something we used to learn called a journal. Just taking note of everything that you do. You'll be very surprised that if you take a pen and paper today and write who you are, just write the things that you've done. You write so many things about yourself that you've actually never thought about. We keep forgetting. And somebody once said that the weakest ink might actually be stronger than the strongest memory. So don't rely on your memory. Life has so many things we go through. Look at the way Nairobi becomes crazy at some point. So there's rain, there's traffic, there's everything. The things you did at work, you've already forgotten when you come back home. So what you need to do is to have some sort of, do it in your own way. You don't really have to do what I do, but have somewhere you can actually be able to take note of everything that you do. The things you think about sharing. When I'm in the vehicle, especially when I have my phone, one of the things that I do to create ideas around the things I want to share, I do them, during, I would say, 2 periods of time. One is 10 minutes before I go to bed. So I'll take my phone, and before I switch it off and sleep, I take 10 minutes just to gather some things that I would want to, add to my brand. And whenever I get into a vehicle, let's say it's a public vehicle and there's a lot of craziness, as you understand, what I do is to take my phone and just come up with some sort of ideas that can actually be able to resonate very well with my brand. And I take that to a master document and come up with either an article, come up with a video, or anything that can actually be able to build, that particular brand. So have somewhere you can actually be able to note everything that you'd actually be able to, you want to do. And then the second thing is be disciplined. When you have your guide, please follow your guide as it is. Even if people do not respond as you wanted, it doesn't really matter how many people have responded. There's one thing that you realize on LinkedIn if you're very active. There are people who will read what you say, or they will watch what you're saying, but they will never put a comment. But they know you anyway. So don't worry so much about people who said, people who put a comment or they liked or they didn't like. It is not about that. Sometimes you can pass a message to someone who's coming to buy your product. Just one person can buy the entire business that belongs to you. So ensure that you just speak to that audience and build that audience slowly. Don't move away from it. Just be consistent and speak to that audience. It keeps growing, it keeps growing, it keeps growing every other day. And I can assure you, 1 year, 2 years down the line, you'd actually be able to reap the benefits that Kay was mentioning. That people can come back and reward you, for the work that you've always been doing. And then you can actually be able to use templates. AI is here. One of the capabilities that AI has as we speak, you can actually ask ChatGPT today to create for you a template for something, and it will literally draw for you that template. So use the AI capabilities that we have and now put in your brain. AI just helps you to think and think better. Then always, tailor your content. Ensure that before your content goes out, tailor it. Make sure that it resonates very well with what you want to share. Then regularly monitor your brand. Monitoring and evaluation is very key at this point. Within 1 month or 1 week, evaluate. What are you getting from, the things that you're doing? Are people beginning to reach out to you? Are people beginning to see your brand? Are you getting a lot of visibility? I'll give you my own practical example. One of the things that I analyze every week are, the impressions, the likes and everything that happens on whatever that I share. And I've actually been able to improve. I think at this point, I have about 60,000 impressions in a week. Whenever I share something, I have about 60,000 impressions. So I would want to move that to about 100,000 plus. So it is something that you can also, work, you can also be able to work on it. And then the last one is, don't forget to be authentic. I think one of the words that has been repeated by almost all of us in this conversation is being authentic. If there's one thing that I would admire any other person, is what I do not have. So if Wandy is very good in storytelling, that is what will make me, follow Wandy. If, let's say, Susan is knowledgeable on something, that is what will make me follow Susan. That's why the people who are listening to us here actually follow us differently for different things. And when they heard that we are, meeting here, everybody has come because of what they probably had here and there. And now they are putting all this knowledge together. And from today, now they're beginning to again follow other people that they need to know. So it's important for you to know that being authentic is just being you, and then people will reward you for being you. So that would be my submission. Thank you, Wandy, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. And I'm sitting here and wondering, where did the time go? Because we have 2 minutes to the time for closure. And I just want to go back to all the panelists and ask them to give us their closing remarks in just 1 minute or two, so that we can be able to finish in good time. So we go Susan, then Kay, and then we finish with you, Emmanuel.
I believe in taking action. So my question to all of us today is, what's one thing that you can do today that will get you a step closer to the brand that you want to build? So you want to be known for something. There's where you are today, there's where you want to be tomorrow. So taking into account what Emmanuel has just told us. So if you're building for tomorrow and not for today, what's one action that you can take today that will get you a step closer to who you want to be tomorrow? Take that step today. And then keep working it out until you build the brand that you want to see, and that brings you the career success that you have waited for so long to achieve. It's very possible. I am living proof that it can be done. So if it can be done, if my clients have done it, you too can do it. Thanks so much, Wandy.
Great.
Thank you very much, Susan.
Great. So thank you, Susan, because I don't think I could have said it better. What I will ask maybe the audience to do is to open your mind and your heart for feedback. Sometimes we're afraid to hear the truth, and without hearing the truth, we cannot improve. So as you are starting, then ask for feedback that will help you improve, and it will help you along your journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kay.
Wandy, I lost you. I can't hear you, but I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry, I think I lost you a bit. So my parting shot would be very simple, that if today you visited any street in town or anywhere, you realize that everybody has a space. God created spaces for all of us. So if I'm following K on the road, K would leave and I would follow. So ensure that you just utilize the space that you have and do something. Somebody is actually going to see what you're doing. So you all have the space to grow. You all have the space to grow your brand. Take advantage of that space. If somebody left that space, fit in and move on. Thank you and bye.
Thank you very much, our panelists. It's been quite a pleasure for us to speak about branding. I just want you to go with the takeouts that the panelists have given you. What is your brand? What is it driven by? Do you know your values? Do you know your purpose? Are you heading in a particular direction? What is your brand strength? What is your brand equity? Have you been able to taste it? And are you using feedback to monitor and continuously improve your brand? And I really hope that these insights will be able to catapult your career to the next level that you want, so that you can be able to get everything that you require. You have been a lovely audience. My name is Wandera Kweyu. This has been our first webinar of the year, and we look forward to hosting you next month, same day, same time. That is the last Friday of every month from 9 till 10:30. Thank you very much, and do have a very lovely weekend ahead.